Hi, good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody at the end of the show. I still can see a lot of people. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Tashish. I've been in the blockchain space since about 7 years now. Started with helping startups and enterprises building solution, which I still do. So we have a services company where we build products, and under Unicus, we are building a real-world asset tokenization platform. Okay, yeah. So instead of RWA, I generally call it as RVA. It's real value assets that we call. So let's first differentiate between virtual asset and real world asset. So what I understand and I explain is real world assets are those which are tangible, which you can feel, touch, and see with your eyes. And the virtual assets are the cryptocurrencies, the digital assets that we cannot touch and feel. How do we hold these assets? So for example, if it's a tangible asset like a real estate, so you hold it in form of a title deed, keep it in your locker, in your cupboard, in your pocket, anywhere. And then the actual real world asset which is tokenized that we keep in our wallet. The NFTs are example, the tokens are example. So they are in our cryptographic wallets. We store it there. Ownership and custody is something which is really important for us to understand when we talk about real-world asset tokenization. So in traditional assets, the ownership and the custody doesn't remain with us. Ownership is under our name, but the custody is with some third-party custodian, which verifies our ownership. So generally, the custody is not in our hands. And then centralization and decentralization that we need to understand. So centralization, we have some central authority managing the entire operations, the logistics and everything. In decentralization, it's not the case. So centralization examples, we have banks, we have other regulators, other custody holders as well, who take care of our assets. Then, of course, we have a long list of examples, some potential assets that can be tokenized. So real estate is a very vital example that we see. People are working heavily towards tokenizing real estate because that has been a very important and a very significant investment asset that people trust in due to many factors. So then again, financial instruments, the money market, the capital market, bonds, debts, everything is getting tokenized. There is a different process to it. Then businesses and projects are being tokenized. So if there is a new company, earlier in the traditional manner, people split it into equity, people buy it, it gets traded into the security exchanges. But now businesses are getting tokenized with the help of security tokens. People can buy equity and hold it. Then commodities and precious metals. Gold, there are a lot of people working on gold and silver. Then there are precious metals which are limited in supply and are unique. That's also being tokenized heavily and regularly now. IP is something very interesting. Intellectual property, if in the traditional manner, there have been authorities, centralized authorities, who have been issuing patents and other certificates verifying your intellectual property. But now, using decentralization, this intellectual property has become an amazing asset which can be tokenized, then fractionalized, and then can be used in multiple manners. In fact, vehicles are getting tokenized. There are many interesting other assets that have been tokenized, event tickets and passes. That's something which I worked on last year, and people are heavily investing into. So these are non-fungible, but yeah, it's becoming the passes and entry tickets for any event or any club or anything. That's also being tokenized. Then hotel booking inventory, hotel inventory is also getting tokenized. So the people are trying their hands on multiple examples. So yeah, the process is really important to understand how is it done. So if you want to tokenize any real-world asset. It can be in two forms, fungible tokens or non-fungible tokens. So by fungible, I would say these are security tokens. We buy the asset under an SPV, create a SPV, special purpose vehicle. So there are some regulators who have given permission for that. And the owner of those SPVs will be the security token holders. Like the owner of traditional companies, they hold equity and stock. In this case, there are security tokens. So these tokens are fungible tokens. But then there are people who are trying to tokenize assets by using non-fungibility. NFTs, there were a lot of projects that were an example, though they didn't have much business value. But yes, they were a good validators that how this process can be handled. And there are on-chain and off-chain assets. So any asset which is conceived or which is born on-chain, that can be a digital asset. That's called on-chain tokenization. And any asset where we have, which is in the physical world, but there is an intermediary in between, and then it is tokenized, that's called off-chain. So, I mean, most of you must have read, but then the advantages and the benefits are all similar. But yeah, I'll explain one by one. Seamless entry, there is not much documentation required. In a few cases, KYC, KYB verification is required. Otherwise, then it's as seamless as connecting your wallet and buying or trading any of those assets. Low cost management, there is no documentation, there's not a lot of people, not a lot of employees involved in managing all these transactions and documentation. So it's really low cost. Fractionalized ownership is, of course, a huge example. Any asset which maybe is at a cost of $1 million can be tokenized into, say, 100,000 fractions. The cost goes down drastically. So it can be accessible to people who cannot afford much, and that can be any kind of asset. It's borderless. The investments can be done in a global format. Highly liquid. So when your entry is easy, it's a low-cost fraction. You can easily liquidate your asset on multiple marketplaces or other online platforms. Then, of course, decentralized ownership. There's no centralized authority who can come one day and say, no, you don't own this asset. There is this regulation, there's that. It's completely in your hand. The ownership is in your hand. The custody is in your hand. And yeah, of course, I spoke about absolute custody. So in many cases, there have been a lot of incidents where on an online platform, you see that you have the ownership, but you don't have the custody. Like in banks, we have seen banks failing miserably. You can see 100,000 of any currency in your account, but banks, they do not pay you. They say that you don't have the custody. It's all just digital and virtual money. So, but in this case, the absolute custody remains in your hand. Yeah, so let's speak something about landscape. So we still are too early in a too nascent stage. There are a lot of hurdles that we can see, specifically in terms of the regulations that I'll speak about. So there is no proper regulation in terms of assets that are tokenized. And since in the traditional manner, all the assets are managed by a government or a regulator or any agency, so there is no proper regulation at the moment. That's why the industry is struggling. But yes, of course, there's a good, big, huge future that we see. Gartner has predicted that the total market size would be in the range of $6 billion by 2025, 26. So yeah, we see a huge future in this. There is a lot of ups and downs, and there is a lot of talk about it. But yeah, there are a lot of startups, companies working on it, large enterprises investing a lot. So it's a amazing opportunity. If you have any questions, you can ask me outside here. If there is any assistance you require in development consulting, I'll be available. Thank you.